Hey everyone, welcome back to Change Your Perspective, Change Your Awareness, Change Your Life. Dr. Michelina AF, hashtag that felon doctor, here to talk to you about wounds, wounding, and today we are talking about another one that is my personal favorite, which is the rejection wound. Now, rejection and abandonment, very close, but different. Abandonment, as I talked about yesterday, has to do with perceived loss or actual loss and how you internalize that. What's wrong with me? Why did they leave? Rejection is a perceived unworthiness, right? So if they left, you might feel both abandoned because like, what's wrong with me? Why'd they leave? And a rejection of like, I'm not worthy to have them, for them to stay. Rejection is when we take a loss personally and we feel like we weren't worthy of that attention, that affection, that presence, that anything. So rejection is basically when you're not accepted, when you don't feel accepted, which is why it differs from abandonment, right? Abandonment is you were left. Rejected is you weren't accepted. And we need, on some very fundamental level, because we are communal creatures, to feel accepted. We need to feel seen, heard, valued, loved, accepted, understood. That is where rejection comes in. So it's very emotional. Whereas like abandonment can be very physical. Like they physically left, right? It can be emotional. But for the most part, rejection is almost, I don't want to say almost always emotional, but like almost always emotional. You know, because like somebody can be right in your sphere of influence and still reject you. They didn't go anywhere. Or you can feel rejection, right? It could be a perceived rejection. It doesn't mean they actually rejected you. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. So for me, I've had rejection all my whole life. I've always dealt with this. And it is a very different thing than, abandonment. Abandonment came from a very specific moment of my father, the caretaker that I had for the first 3 years of my life, leaving. Rejection had a lot to do with my character and people not knowing how to deal with it. Like when I was 2, my grandparents were putting me in the corner because they were like, yeah, her personality is too strong and we need to curb it. When I was 5, I was getting locked in the kitchen because my grandparents didn't know how to deal with my curiosity, you know, and I was 2 and 5. Like I was just showing up in my authentic self. Like I didn't know societal rules, but I didn't listen well. I didn't take no for an answer well. These are things I've been doing from my womb space, apparently, according to my mother, right? Like that, more than my siblings, more than I guess the average, it makes sense now that I've grown up in such a way where those cursings are blessings. I forge new paths all the time. I'm the first person, and right now the only person in my family who has any advanced degrees. I was the first person to go to college. My sister did as well. Like, there are a lot of new paths I forge all the time. And those things that were in me, in their raw state, I will say, at 2 and 5, that I needed for my own personal journey were the cause of a lot of rejection. I'm far too intellectual. I'm far too curious. I'm far too outspoken. I always have been. And so when you walk into a space like that, I'm far too confident in my own abilities. And when you walk into a space like that, I can't lie to you. I was always rejected before I was accepted. Literally always. And that's not, I mean, literally always. And all I did was have to walk on, in 7th grade, I'm not kidding you guys, rejection is my friend. And I'll talk about that a little bit more, but I walked onto the playground, I guess, not really playground, like blacktop and like softball fields and things. In my new school, I was 12. All I did was walk up, looking around, don't know anything, and literally piss somebody off. This girl, to the point where she came over to me, she's like, do you have a problem? And I was like, I'm new here. Like, I don't know anything. I had an aggressive sort of attitude, and so I engaged with her in ways I shouldn't have. Gotten a lot of fights when I was 12 and 13, guys. You know, can't win them all. But I was always rejected before I was accepted. She and I became friends, then we became enemies, frenemies, all types of things. But sometimes you just walk up in a space, especially if you're me, piss people off. And hey, you know what? That's fine, because rejection is protection. Rejection is protection. Redirection is protection. And so when you're rejected, and this is a thing I had to really, really, really reframe, it's just working out for your good. It's just working out for your good. Now, what happened to me, and perhaps it's happened to you, I don't know, I'm telling you this so that you can figure it out for yourself. If you have this wound, things that can come from it, is I got so good at being hated that I didn't understand how to be loved. Rejection wound plus abandonment wound equaled Michelina did not know how to receive love from anybody, ever. And it is something I still struggle with, honestly. And it ruined my relationships with I don't want to say my mother, because like she's always loved me, but like there's a disconnect because I can't feel it. I know it, but I can't feel it. With my Lord and Savior, I know he loves me, I can't feel it. So I have a hard time, and I work through it all the time, but I internalized rejection to the point that it made sense to me when people hated me. But I never understood how anybody could love me. Like, what good am I doing in the world? Who cares? And so that really came into my awareness in 2018 when my shit went viral, and I understood how people hated me. I was like, of course they do. They don't know, and they don't need to know, and there's clickbait headlines, and like, easy to hate me, fine. But the people who were like, hey, you just made a mistake, like shit happens, like you're still a good person, you're still, trying to do the best you can. I was like, what? I was like, I don't understand how you can see me like that. I know that about myself, but why do you? That is the real detriment of internalizing rejection wound, is that you feel like it makes sense for you to be hated, but you don't understand why anybody would love you. And so many of us have abandonment plus rejection equals unable to receive love, unworthy to receive love. And that is like the biggest, and there are a lot of issues with these two wounds, but that is the biggest one. Because then you keep attracting things into your life that aren't serving you really, not actually. Relationships and things. So the rejection wound is a twofold thing. You can have it on the one hand where it's like, it hurts when people reject you, and there's a lot of pain there, and that happens. I mean, we don't like to be rejected. And so we'll people please, or we will, because all of these symptoms that everybody has, people pleasing and like all the things, overthinking and all the things, they actually come from these root wounds. And all these root wounds come from psychological fear. Yeah, I know. Isn't that wild? I've really pulled it back, guys. I've really pulled back the layers of this stuff. So like at the top, it's like, I hate my life. And then, no, you know what? Not that. I hate people. There's so many people out there who hate people, right? I hate people is that like belief. But that's like the top surface level symptom. That's the thing you can see. Underneath that is, I don't trust people. Underneath that is, I don't feel safe around people. Underneath that is, I've been rejected by a lot of people. Underneath that is the fear of nobody's gonna accept me. Isn't that wild? And so when we hate people, we act very selfish. We don't want to serve anybody. We don't want to do the things that bring abundance. We don't want to sow before we reap. And then we live this lack lifestyle. And it all goes down to this psychological fear. And if you're a Christian, and only if you're a Christian, that's a tool of the enemy, by the way. But that's only for Christians. And if you're not, hey, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. Everybody needs mindset work. Personally, I think everybody needs Jesus too, but like, hey, if you don't want Jesus, it don't matter to me. Not my business. That's your relationship, not mine. So, all that to say, the rejection wound is a tough one because it hurts in so many different ways on so many different levels. It hurts, but you're not going to be everybody's cup of tea. And I read this story when I was doing my research on authentic leadership, and it was about this like And this is a fictional parable, but it's an important one. We love parables here, which are like metaphoric stories to convey a larger point. Let us say there was this, and this is not mine, this is from Blekking, Blekking. It's a really interesting read. It's research-based. And it's this story about how there's this very bright little elf. She's super bright, and she's just going around all over. And because she's so bright, people are like, oh, I can't see. And that, like, you know, they start covering their eyes, they start looking away from her. And some of them, they're like, you're too bright, I need to dim this light. And they start throwing mud at her, right? They start throwing mud at her. And this hurts, all of this hurts, because she's just trying to make friends. She's trying to show up and be herself. But people can't accept her because she's too bright for them, right? And so what she does, because it hurts, is she hires a team of bodyguards. And they dim her light so that people can be around, but there's always a distance. There's always a gap. And she's still herself, but she's not really out among the people the way she wants to be. She's not really shining the way she wants to be. And one day, this equally bright little elf taps on the bodyguard and like, let me through. I want to hang out with this person because I can handle their light, right? And I think you get the story here, guys. I think you do. If you're not shining brightly, or if someone isn't shining brightly and you are, you're going to be too much for them. I know myself, I've always been too much for most people. That's cool. Now it's a thing on like TikTok and Instagram. It's like, if I'm too much, go find less, you know? But in my mind, I'm like, if I'm too much, come be more. Come be more with me. Come on up. You know what I mean? Get abundant. We have a lack mentality. It's like, get abundant. Don't find less, be more. Match my pace, you know? Come on. And so the rejection wound is pervasive. It is very prevalent. Most people have it because there's so many rejections out there because we can't please everybody any of the time. I won't even say all the time, any of the time. There's always going to be someone that is not compatible to you. They're going to reject you, you're going to reject them. You're going to like someone, they're not going to like you. Like, it's just, we don't always like the things that are the best for us, you know? And so all that being said, rejection wound is a deep one. And it really doesn't matter. Yes, like all things, the earlier on it happens, the more it cements in your subconscious, the harder it is to uproot. Trust me, I know. But very possible and does take work. But it is easier when it's a little bit later. But rejection wound can onset at any time. Anytime rejection wound can onset. And so, you know, any perceived rejection, anybody who's not accepting you, anybody who was there and then wasn't there is going to probably be an abandonment and a rejection. And whenever we get in a relationship, that happens a lot because people don't stay because we're growing with them. We're not necessarily building with them. And not everybody knows the difference. I could talk about rejection literally all day. I could talk about the rejection wound. I'm a master of the rejection wound. I had to get better at the acceptance wound, like getting accepted, being accepted, understanding when people understood me. Like, that was wild. But it's not. The acceptance wound isn't really a thing. I mean, it could be, anything can be, but like my rejection wound turned into an acceptance wound, which is when I was like surprised that people accepted me. Really wild. So all that to say, I hope that that is insightful to help you get really good self-awareness, mental clarity, emotional awareness, and emotional clarity. School opens next week. I'll be talking more about that as we kind of move forward. And if you like what you are hearing here, like, subscribe, hit the bell, comment below, and tell your friends so we can grow the channel. And I will see you guys on the next video.